By show of hands, how many of you have interviewed and hired someone before? How many of you had to do it at the age of 18? How many of you had to be completely naked in front of this newly hired person just simply days after? My name is Dave Dame, and I have cerebral palsy. But cerebral palsy doesn't define me. I'm one of the world-leading experts in agile and organizational change. What is agile? Agile is a framework that helps us deal with the complexity and unknown. It's not about doing everything faster. Rather, we do short, tight time boxes. We quickly do something, inspect, and adapt. And then we apply the learning right away to try it again or solve the next biggest problem or challenge. I'm going to share with you today of how I used an agile mindset to help navigate a world that wasn't ready for somebody with cerebral palsy. Is that exact same tool set that I use to help organizations manage their disability. They don't have cerebral palsy. They have the lack of inability to change from the status quo. When I first entered the work world, I had a degree, graduated from university, ready to go. Unfortunately, the work world wasn't ready for me. I applied to many different jobs, and out of all the jobs I applied to, I could only get into half of them because my wheelchair couldn't get in the building for me to have the interview. Finally, 10 months later, I got my first job. It was great. My first job was, I was a learning logistics coordinator for one of the big three automotive. And it was a lot of paperwork and a lot of folders. As you can see, my hands don't really lend itself to paperwork and folders, but I struggled to do it anyways. It took me 12 hours to do what my peers could do in 8 hours. But it wasn't working the long extra hours that bothered me. On my first day, I learned that my wheelchair couldn't fit in the bathroom stall. If that was today, I would easily ask for a modification. But back then, in 1995, it took me so long to land my first job. I was already feeling insecure that it was taking me 4 hours longer to do what other people could do in 8 hours. I decided to hold it for every day for 3 years. I could have gave up at any moment, but I'm glad I proceeded through, because a couple years later, my company decided to invest into the personal computer. So I could quickly, what I learned was I changed the way I did my work. From all the paperwork, folders, I quickly utilized the computer to automate it and rechange everything I did. And there was this newfangled thing called the internet that came out. So instead of keystroking it all myself, I designed a website so vendors could enter it themselves. So what was taking me 12 hours before, I was now getting done in 3 hours. The guy in the wheelchair was getting done his work before lunch. Who was disabled now? And from then, my career changed from me just being grateful to have a job, that I became the person that helped redefine the way people they did work. As my colleagues were all starting to get computers, I was the one that was getting them to look at their jobs, redesigning it to give them those efficiencies. And then they had me go from department to department, helping finance change the way they did budgeting, having marketing change the way they did marketing, trying to get efficiencies everywhere. And then my career over the last number of years took me from company to company, city to city. Instead of me begging for a job, I was getting poached to get them to change. Now, there are 3 common things I found in navigating my life with a disability as the same three things organizations have trouble navigating as they're trying to get more agile or ready to change. That is the comfortableness of setting a vision, embracing the vulnerability and giving up control, and having resilience to continue to try again and again from the applied learning that Agile gives you. So vision. When I first come into a company, they're like, Dave, we want to be agile. I'm like, okay, why? You know, I want to be agile. Agility without business outcomes is just like chasing your tail, running in circles. So I have to work with them. Do you want to go after more customers? Do you want to deliver to customers quicker? Or do you want to employ technology differently to meet them? Any of those are great reasons to go agile. But what I got to get them to do is set a vision. Because now that you're going to get a capability, the organization's moving quicker, you're going to need to be able to reshape your vision more frequently. And setting visions are scary because we're looking into the unknown. We're making our guess best on what we feel where we want to go the company to go. And we have to have the confidence to think we go there. And so what I really need to do is help them establish a comfort to set that vision. And luckily for me, my parents were visionaries themselves. In 1971, when I was born, my parents were told, David may never live past 12. David may never be able to speak clearly, if at all. And even if he does, don't expect much from David because the world isn't set up for somebody with a disability. So they advised my parents to put me in an institution. This way I at least could be comfortable in what time I had left, and I wouldn't be a burden to them as they would have to take care of me. In 1971, having cerebral palsy, this was the status quo. But luckily, my parents were visionaries themselves. They wouldn't accept that. They could see where somebody with a cerebral palsy could go, have a life, impact people, fall in love, and do whatever. They didn't know how we were going to do it, but they knew if they took an agile approach by just trying something and then doing it, inspect to see how it went, learn, and if it didn't work, find another way or try again. But it was in that way they could set a vision. Another thing my parents had to do as well as organizations is embrace vulnerability of losing control. You might remember the 3 questions I asked at the beginning. At the age of 18, this is exactly what I had to do. I decided to move away from home to go to university. I had to actually recruit, hire people that were complete strangers that were going to simply see me naked days later. I would have to trust these strangers to touch me in places that I've been conditioned to never let a stranger have you touch. But this was the vulnerability I would have to embrace if I ever wanted to be independent. I want to ask you in the audience, look around and make eye contact with somebody you don't know. Hold on, make eye contact. Kind of awkward, isn't it? What if I told you that immediately after my talk, you were going to be naked and that this person was going to shower you right after? This was the vulnerability that I had to accept. And it wasn't just my vulnerability. My parents had to have vulnerability. They had to give up control to me that I would hire and make the right decision to trust their son that they spent the whole 18 years taking care of into their hands. And when I go to organizations, I got to get leaders to strip their control and push decision-making down to their whole teams around them. Because in most organizations, all the decisions are made by few people at the top, which takes a long time for people to get responses to those answers. That is the biggest thing that are holding organizations back, are waiting for decisions. Let me ask you, how many of you in this room are waiting for a decision from somebody in your organization and how to move forward? Good, I like this participation. How many of you are holding up decisions to keep people from moving forward? I can tell who the middle managers are because they put their hands up for both. But if we're going to be able to move more agile, we have to push down the decision-making control, which make leaders feel vulnerable, right? Because this is the thing that gave them courage and clothes, and now they've set a vision, and they got to trust all their teams around them that they're going to be able to enable their vision. And the teams themselves are nervous because they haven't had to make decisions before. But the beauty is, using Agile, they can do a number of experiments, see which one is best, and choose the best one instead of the first one because they didn't have to wait for a decision. So this gives you more speed to move forward. And you know what else this gives you? It gets you to teach people to be decision makers. When I first became a leader, my biggest fear was, now I have to start making decisions. Previously to then, I just executed other people's decisions, but now I got to make a decision, which is scary. But by leaders pushing those decisions down early, they're able to teach them to experiment, get their teams comfortable with being wrong, because you can fix a wrong decision quicker than you can fix a non-decision, and you build that resilience all the way through. And the best thing is you're creating leaders out of everybody around you, getting them to be able to pick themselves up, fall back down, get back up. Because a failure, we got to change the word from failure to learning. Learning has to become a first-class citizen. And if people can feel safe to fail, then they can learn to move on. But you know what else this builds? It builds resilience. Because no longer is somebody going to stay with the company their whole career. Right now, we might have 4 or 5 years in the same company. So it's important we build the capacity or capability for people to make decisions and move on. No matter who comes in and comes out, we build that resilience. And my father did that for me. Every day when I used to have to go eat my breakfast, lunch, or dinner, we had stairs in our house. And I had to climb on my hands and knees up every step for a meal. And I would always ask my dad, hey, Dad, can you build a ramp to make it easier for me to go up? And he never did. Years later, I asked him to say, you know what? Why did you never build that ramp for me? And he said, that's simple. I'm not always going to be here to build ramps for you. You're going to have to learn to climb and struggle when I'm no longer here. 2 days later, he passed away. It's been 25 years since my dad died. And I'm glad that I've been able to live the vision that him and my mother set for me, that even after he's gone, I've had to set my own vision, fight my own battles, and move forward, and do things that he could never imagine, where I can be on stage to give an idea for you to go into action. I want to leave you with this. For you leaders that are in the room, get comfortable at stating a vision. Get comfortable in the unknown. And push those decisions down close to your team members to get them to feel empowered. For those of you that have leaders, go and ask to get those decisions. try to get that autonomy and empowerment to move forward. Because if you can see a different world, then you'll have a different world available to you. Thank you.